brilliant friend. It is an 8 episode rendition to explore the life and journey of two girls from childhood in early 1850s to adulthood in late 1970s, where they learn to wander, befriend each other, plunge into creative risks, back each other, and explore settling and totalization. The amalgamation of the novel and the 8 episode television rendition is a unique approach of utilizing primary text with versatile theoretical frameworks to explore the distinct paradigms of ambience, intimacy, and belonging as I explore in this research. Psychogeography is an amalgamation of two sciences, as the name connotes, which are geography and psychology, largely linked to Guy Debord. This multidisciplinary approach, theoretical model, uses human bodies, as research instruments, but in a very intimate way, and derives as a way of research where psychogeographers uh, situated in different geographies visit different places, wander aimlessly, and gather data related to human experiences in various geographical locales. Derived technique is used in my research almost as a metaphor where Leela and Elena, who are the protagonists of My Brilliant Friend, act as psychogeographers and take on a drive in Naples, that is their area, and it is a ghetto in Italy. So, psychogeography is defined as a study of the precise law and side effects of the geographical environment, consciously organized or not, on the emotions and behaviors of individuals. As Debord says, it is a spatial theoretical model where I am exploring joy. My approach also uses Dr. Lorraine Alkin's approach of flannery, which exploring the propensity of any geographical experience as a psychogeographical emblem adds to the identity construction and memory of any subject. Psychogeography is not only an experience, but it also means modeling the mind, and thus it explores identity formation of any population. Dr. Lauren Alkin, quoting geographer Yu-Fu Tuan, says, "A space becomes a place when through movement we invest it with meaning, when we see it as something to be perceived, apprehended, and experienced, thus giving a base meaning to the idea of loitering, which is also a terminology in psychogeography." Dr. Lauren Alkin, in her book Flaneur, defines this phenomena of flannery, that is basically my base model, that is it is derived from a male idea of flaneur, but it kind of shuns the whole idea and adds a joyful experience into it, where women wander, explore places, and they do not necessarily have an aim in this exploration of their selves, of their minds, and this is against the actual structuring. In this very model, you do not necessarily have to be loyal to your geography, politically speaking, but when metaphorically and spiritually speaking, this is a model of deviance. Dr. Lauren Alkin defines the wanderers, the flaneurs, as models, as women who do not merely wander as privileged flaneurs, but are creative viewers of geographical spaces. And this is how Leela and Elena's friendship in My Brilliant Friend acts as a model of creating joy against the capitalistic infiltrations of commercial properties. This pastiche of modernity in the little town is the quandary that haunts the inhabitants of Leela and Elena's world. Such vestibules of modernity act as the perpetual barriers in the growth of the protagonists and their town, and it also haunts the past idiosyncrasies. Their past idiosyncrasies continue to haunt them through and through. Why? Because this enforced modernity becomes a melody in their approach, in what the protagonists are seeing. So Elena Greco narrates My Brilliant Friend as story, and it is a biased story because we have one voice, but the way it is presented is such a smooth and jarring manner. Quoting from My Brilliant Friend, Elena says, We are in the age of simultaneous, of juxtaposition, the near and the far, the sight and the scattered, a period in which, in my view, the world is putting itself to the test, not so much as a great way of life destined to grow in time, but as a net that links points together and creates its own models. This model is can be said to be derived from the Foucauldian view of interdisciplinary approach, where you sabotage space as such and create your own space, which becomes a heterotopia. Um, the space is not an empty dimension along which social groupings become structured. Sociologist Anthony Giddens notes, and I would like to assert here that my approach is a very multidisciplinary approach in this research. But space has to be considered in terms of its involvement in the constitution of systems of interaction, as Elena Ferrante highlights through my brilliant friend. The friendship of Leela and Linu is complex, uh, but the two girls belonging to almost the same class, neighborhood, it might seem like this is not something very new that a friendship came out, but they explore endemic joy in such a way that it seems like sanity and joy are acting as a heterotopia against the capitalist benefice. In a very moving instance in the novel, Leela and Linu take a plunge into a creative risk where they go wander into to the sea against taking without taking anyone's permission, and that wandering creates the sort of social memory against the social idea where the people of their populace are not necessarily considered people as such, but um, uh, they're this seeking refuge in the crowd, the girls in search of perpetual bliss. This is this approach is just rooted in thoroughness of happiness only. There is no, the other way around it. They want joy from their own land, from their indigenous spiritual land, and this is how we define exploring the sensoria of an indigenous land, which is to root your memories, your joys, to derive joy basically from where you are situated. And this approach wants you to situate yourself in your place, and which unfortunately has become a very aggrandizing sort of idea in these times. I'd like to conclude my presentation by saying that the role of identity making in synchronization with time and space is a vital phenomenon of any geographical location. Simultaneously, individual ideas of geography, especially heterotopias, play a significant role in the essence of psychogeographical identities and in the erasure of capitalistic manifestations. Elena and Leela voice such a role, such a process and vigor of this identity construction, psychogeographically speaking, by invigorating it through Flannery. And here, Flannery is women seeking joy through plunging into different experiences, which will in the end create happiness. I want to say that my research aims to initiate the sort of discursive debate where we explore the role of psychogeography, its credibility in literary humanities and interdisciplinary research, and the prospect of treating literary television series as potential contemporary literature. That would be all for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rita. Dr. Doddy, can you please request the next presenter, Noreen Mumtaz, to present? Noreen Mumtaz, can you please start with your presentation?
Assalamualaikum, can you hear me?
Yes, you can.
Am I the second presenter or the third presenter?
The second presenter, Maria Haroon, is not here with us, so.
She's here. She's here.
No, I'm here.
Okay,
She's
then.
here. She's here.
Okay. I'm sorry, Maria. I did not. Your
It's okay,
surname
I'll be
was
presenting third.
Harun here, so I had a little misunderstanding. I'm
Okay.
very sorry for that.
Is Dr. Dodhi here?
That's all
Dr.
right.
Dodhi, are you here? The chair?
Yeah,
Are you here?
I'm here and listening to these people.
Haji, could you please introduce the presenters? Because we were waiting for you. Rita has asked for your presence. So could you please introduce the next speaker?
The next speaker, there's a confusion between two people. Is it Noreen or is it Maria? So, according to the list, we have got Maria with us. Maria, will you please come forward and start your
Yes,
presentation?
sure. Yes, sure. Thank you.
The title of your talk, please.
Okay, I just share you.
Yes,
I just
please
share
share
my
the
slide
title.
here.
Yes, please share the title. No, please share the title of your talk.
Okay. That is Objectification and Otherness, a critical analysis of the female characters in Shahid Nadeem's plays Black is My Robe and A Woman of Sorrow. Let me
Okay.
share, yes, let me share the slides. Okay, I'm unable to share. Uh,
Okay, Maria, let's take a start.
okay,
A few
are,
seconds
are
ago, we
my,
can see
wait,
your
wait,
slides, but
are my,
now your slide is not visible.
can you see my slides? Are they visible?
A few seconds ago, we can see, yes, now your slide is
Now,
visible. The first
okay,
slide
now
is
they're
available. Okay.
okay. So the title of my research article is Objectification and Otherness, a critical analysis of the female characters in Shahid Nadeem's plays Black is My Robe and A Woman of Sorrow. The present research is conducted through the lens of Simone de Beauvoir's The Second
Miss
Sex, the
Maria, will you
plays
please
Black
speak louder?
The plays Black is My Robe and Woman of Sorrow discuss women's objectification. According to Simone de Beauvoir, the only way a woman can define herself with the relation of man, she is nothing and has nothing except what man decides for her. Man is absolute in every sense of the word, but she is absolute in only being a sex object. Her desires and her whole being is distinct and distinguished only by the definition of man. Subjectivity and authority belongs to man, and she is the other. I have taken two plays, Black is My Robe and Woman of Sorrow. Black is My Robe is set in a remote and deserted area of Pakistan named as Cholistan, where on the one hand resources are limited to that much extent that people scarcely maintain morality. And on the other side of the string, a woman has the status of an ox. Women are objects and commodities, a product of exchange value. And the other play, Women of Sorrow, depicts the theme of women's trafficking from Bangladesh to Pakistan, where they are treated as goods and commodities. Literature review Professor Dr. Asadullah Larik, in his article Treatment of Women in Nadeem Aslam's novels, argues that women are facing multiple issues irrespective to the region they belong to. They are abducted, ill-treated, and stoned to death for saving their so-called honor, framed by diplomatic and hypocrite society and male members of one's own family. Every novel of him portrays the picture of a woman sufferer, as in Wasted Virgil, Katrina is stoned to death for being bound in a marital relationship with a person who was Christian before embracing Islam. Maria Mize, in her book Patriarchy and Accumulation on a World Scale, argues that in the past, hunting was men's profession and they were always engaged in breeding and hunting animals. This activity built in aggression and violence and a sense of capturing everything. They then started overpowering and snubbing females and men from other tribes and lower ranks. Nanda Salimi, in her article Subjugation, a study of the women characters in Khaled Hosseini's and Roy's novel, analyzes and highlights similar cases. She has proved that in every patriarchal society of every region of the world, women are expected to be voiceless. The objectives of my research are to highlight women's status in terms of gender discrimination and patriarchy in a male chauvinistic society of Pakistan in the light of feminism and the second sex, to prove that females in Pakistan are dependent on men for everything and are treated as objects and animals, to demonstrate that females in Pakistan have no separate identity and individuality, rather they are defined in relation to men. Methodology. This research is qualitative, analytical, and descriptive in nature. Black is My Robe and Woman of Sorrow are used as primary texts. French writer Simone de Beauvoir's feministic theory of the second sex is applied on the text for an in-depth analysis. Moreover, different articles, books, and research papers are used as secondary sources that are present on print, on electronic media, and in printed form. Okay, first of all, I'm going to analyze the first play, that is Black is My Robe, and Black is My Robe sheds a light on the male chauvinistic society in which females have the same status as of cattle. Uh, the main character is of Sundri, and she is experiencing subjugation and humiliation in the hands of two men. One is Vasaya, who is husband of Sundri, and the other one is Pir. And Pir is one who is the demigod of the village, and he is ruling the village under the mask of the religious and virtuous monk. Um, Vasaya gets married again because Sundri is unable to give birth to her husband's child, and then she has to bear the burden of her husband's second wife, and she is known as Sohni. However, the most terrible form of subjugation is seen when Vasaya exchanges his wife Sundri, who is known as a spare wife, with the ox of Ditta. Ditta is another character, and he does not have his wife, means his wife has died, and now he is left with his three children. So here Visaya decides to exchange his wife Sundri with the ox of Ditta, because Ditta has now two oxen and no wife, and Vasaya has no ox but two wives. So both of them exchange, and this is the peak of the most notorious and humiliating type of barter system. Sundari, being infertile, is considered to be a dysfunctional, fruitless, and a reduced form of a female, as a woman's fate and a little bit status as a female correspond to their fertility and productivity all over the world. Vasaya always supports his second wife, Soni, because she is rich and she has brought a large dowry, and her husband expects that she would be blessed with a son. On the other hand, Sundari, the first wife, has to clean the house. She churns milk, she makes butter and serves her husband, and side by side, the second wife of her husband. But Soni can relax because she has brought an ox in her dowry. So, apart from this, there is another example of female subjugation and ignorance that is seen when Messiah takes Soni to the shrine of Pir to have his blessing so that she could give birth to a child, and there Pir rapes her. After the first one, the second play that I'm going to analyze is A Woman of Sorrow. And A Woman of Sorrow is based on the injustice and atrocities that happened when in 1971 Bangladesh was separated from Pakistan, and trafficking of women is the heart of this play. And women are being trafficked in Pakistan, and they are being sold like animals and objects in the play. This play is basically a collaboration between Pakistani and English and Bangladeshi writers. Damaged goods, brand new goods, second-hand stuff. Such types of words are being used by men for women at the border while selling them. And these women are taken from border to Karachi in the auction market, and the place is known as Bengali Para, and that is the auction market. And there, women are paraded in front of the buyers, and women who are married or have lost virginity due to some causes, they are sold on a lower rate. Dukhni is one such character. She remains unnamed till the end of the play, and she dies by self-immolation. She is buried in Pakistan as amanat because neither she is accepted by Pakistani officials nor by Bangladeshi officials. Then another symbol has been used, and that is the symbol of grave, and the whole play has been set in the graveyard. So, grave symbolizes a woman's mind that is dark and that is unknown. Grave of Dukhni symbolizes that no one cares what is happening inside her mind, and she is buried in a nameless grave. There is no name written on her grave. There are many female characters in this play. For example, there is Ambia, then Moina, and Fatima. The other character I'm going to discuss is Ambia. She's also victimized and she is objectified, and she is sold by her father out of poverty and burden of marriages of her elder sister for a handsome amount of money. Then there is another character, and that is an old character, that is Mai. She gets successful in crossing the border at the time of separation of Bangladesh from Pakistan. She comes to Pakistan, and here she gets the idea, or she gets to know that her husband is also here in Pakistan. She manages to reach her husband, but he refuses to accept her, and he says that now she is impure and she is not the one who can stay in a respectable family. So she becomes exhausted, suffocated, disappointed, and desperate to such an extent that she starts disliking the living souls and becomes the friend of the dead ones. She is called the protector of the dead, and she always takes care of the graves because she has tested the love and care of the living ones. Okay, now I'm going to conclude my presentation. Black is My Robe depicts the situation of females living in their own country with their own people in their own region. On the other hand, Woman of Sorrow represents the situation and circumstances of women who are trafficked from their homeland, Bangladesh, to Pakistan. In Pakistan, they are a minority. They are subalterns, due to which they are considered worthy of all types of ill treatment. However, the circumstances due to which women are experiencing ill treatment from men are the same in both the places. Poverty, poor governance, societal norms, traditions, and historical events all are responsible for making this distinction between the sexes. Conversely, women in the plays Black is My Robe and Woman of Sorrow, with the passage of time, tired of suffocation, become bold and brave enough that they are ready to break all the unjust restrictions and chains of slavery. As in Black is My Robe, Sundri, the first wife, resists the unjust peer and Messiah, and she ultimately becomes the leading force of the village. And women in Woman of Sorrow also become braver and decide to escape the miserable situation. A right and strike always occur when the crime and injustice exceed its limit. So, if women are resisting against societal norms, it means there exist some barriers blocking their way to liberty and freedom. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Miss Maria, for giving us such a wonderful presentation in which you have analyzed Pakistani society. Yes, about 2 decades ago, our attitude was totally different. We used to look at English literature, English societies, then American literature, American societies. But now I can see that a change has come, and now we can see the problems of our part of the world, which is really appreciable. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Okay. Let's go to the next presenter. It is Miss Maria Mumtaz, and she's from Lahore Garrison University.
All right, so Assalamu alaikum, can you hear me? Am I audible?
Yes,
All right, so
yes.
this is Noreen Mumtaz, not Maya Mumtaz. So this is Noreen Mumtaz, and I'm from Lahore
Okay.
Garrison University. Assalamu alaikum, ma'am. And I'm not your student directly, but one of my friends is your student. And I remember when I joined the college, you at that moment left the college, and I have heard a lot about you. So since then, I consider you my teacher as well.
Thank you very much for this additional benefit which you are giving to me.
Yes, ma'am. I was really
Thank
happy
you.
to see your name as the conference chair. Oh, all right. So my slides are visible to everybody.
Uh, yes, yes. Now it's better.
Okay, ma'am. May I begin?
Yes, please.
Thank you, ma'am. So basically, my topic of presentation today is gender representation or semiotic analysis of Pakistani movie posters from 1990s and 2010s. So basically, the study extends the previous work of Irvin Goffman, who studied gender advertisements by looking at 500 photo advertisements and analyzing those from 6 subcategories point of views, which we'll be discussing later in detail, along with the 2 genres that are under discussion. So along the lines of the Goffman study, this research analyzes movie posters from 2010s and 1990s era. So the aim of the research is to observe the basic changes that have occurred with the due course of time, and what kind of gender stereotypes were there in 1990s, and what are the changes that we have found in 2010s, and are there real any changes, or are there any similarities or differences? So let's begin. So advertisements are one form of content that can be seen in all media. So media content or text may also be classified as more or less open or closed meaning. So far all the research that have been conducted previously in Pakistani context are not that much depicting the current situation of Pakistani cinema and the movie posters. So previous researches and reviews of movie posters to date have focused either on text alone or either the aesthetic architecture, with only few examining the meaning-making processes of all the main modalities and semiotic methods at the same time. So all the texts in genres of the mass media are based on connotations, and since they are intended to elicit meaning that is cultural. So that was the reason why movie posters were chosen as the instrument of study, and the triggering of the second sense stage involves an increase in the audience comprehension or knowledge through those images or visuals. So basically, there are 6 main research questions, and those are: how are the gender relations being constructed by the audience through visuals or images? What type of gender roles are portrayed in Pakistani movie posters? Are they glamorous or traditional, etc.? So, is there any cultural consumer consideration in using linguistic and social semiotic resources in advertising discourse? Or what are the interpretation of the meaning patterns and social presuppositions of the representation of genders on film posters? Or what are the differences in design, typography, and color tones of the poster representing females and males? So, is there any difference in the portrayal of gender in the 1990s and post of 2010s movie posters? So, we'll be discussing about these things. For talking about the methodology of the research, so this research is qualitative in nature, and it belongs to the semiotic methodology of study, and it analyzes the selected movie posters, which were again 24. However, 12 of those posters will be discussed in the presentation because of the paucity of time. And Goffman's theory of semiotic analysis was selected to identify representation of gender in the Lollywood movies of 90s and 2010s. Lollywood means Pakistani movies. So gender display talk about 6 subcategories. As the Goffman's theory was based on these 6 subcategories, number 1 category is relative size. It will be talking about the gender, how much screen space that particular gender is given in the film poster, and if there is any feminine touch where the woman is touching an object or a human in a way that is expressing some sort of expression or suggesting some sort of other activities. So feminine touch is very specific to women gender displayed in the poster. So then there will be third category that would be talking about function ranking, and here function ranking would be about men and women together playing a collaborative role in any task. However, you'll see that who is more dominant and who is not that much dominant or more recessive. So ritualization of subordination is how much one is submissive to the other person by through positioning of their body. Maybe they would be slanting, maybe they would be half bent, maybe they'd be touching their feet or their legs or their knees. So one of the character would be positioned differently from the other character, and one would be portraying the strongest approach and the other one would be portraying the less strong approach. And the background components will also be discussed, color schemes, clothing, and overall appearance, makeup, color and tones, etc. So because of the time constraint, as I've just mentioned, that the research was generalized to a small data of 24 posters. However, I'll be discussing 6 posters from the 1990s genre and 6 posters from the 2010s genre in my presentation. So being from the 2010s genre, firstly I'm going to discuss about the first subcategory according to Goffman's theory, and that is relative size. So if you can see the image on my right side, I don't know if it's on your right side or the left side, you can see the movie poster that is actor-in-law. And you can see there are 3 humans in this poster, and out of which 2 are male and 1 is female. And there is one object that is umbrella, and there is another object that is camera. And you can see that the male characters are given the limelight, and however one older male gender is not that much happy. He is showing some skeptic or concerned kind of expressions holding the umbrella, whereas the other man showed in the poster is more expressive, excited and happy. And you can see that female, however his knee is bent, but he seems to be much in control of himself and more confident. Whereas if we talk about the female in the poster, you can see that she's very much leaning on the male character, and though she is holding a mic, which is the third object in the poster, but you can see that she is happy and excited, and she is expressing some sort of positive, soft and heartfelt kind of expressions towards the other younger male character. So talking about the table on the left side, you can see that there are 3 categories. One is the sign, the second one is the signifier, the third one is the signified. So as I've just discussed, that there are 2 humans in one major object, that is umbrella, which has taken the most space in the poster. However, second object is camera, and the third object, which is not that much evident in the poster, is the microphone. So signifier, we'll be talking about women. So you can see that women is more heavy but under control of man, dependent and compliant also. Whereas the man or both the men are shown as more powerful. The senior male gender is shown as is dressed up as an officer, probably a lawyer, as it is depicted from the title of the movie also. And own control means somebody who's in charge and who's confident but skeptic. So you can see that umbrella is part of life product, but here it is shown as a symbol of dignity or status, or maybe a symbol of protection for both the genders. So moving on, talking about the second thing, that is feminine touch. The poster on my right side is of the movie Janan, and you can see that there are again two male characters and one female character. And the female character is holding a plate that is carrying petals, and this probably is in the context probably is of the wedding. The setting is just probably of the wedding, because that is very much evident from the rose petals that she's holding. In the background, you can see red sparkles, and red is primarily the color of marriages here in Pakistani culture. And if you can see the men, they're also dressed up in some embellished clothings, and whereas men usually don't wear embellished clothes occasionally in their everyday life. And you can see that the phenomenon of feminine touch is very much evident in the poster, and the space women is carrying in the poster is more than the men in the background. So you can see that the woman is signifying feminine attraction, holding the object, looking towards the camera, and she's very excited, and she seems very happy and in control as well. So talking about man and both the men in the background, you can see that they are indifferent, they are confident, self-controlled, composed, but they are not looking towards the camera. So the poster basically emphasizes the female character in the front of the poster. The object here is plate, rose petal, part of the life again, nature, fertility, and feminine appeal as well, passion and grace also. So this is basically the cultural context of wedding, where I think the poster display that women are the center of attraction in such kind of settings. And then if we talk about the third function of 2010 movies, that is function ranking, and the movie poster under discussion is Tifa in Trouble, and you can see that there are 4 characters in this poster. 2 are male and 2 are female. And if we take a closer look to the poster, you will see that both the females are looking away from the camera, so do men. But both the women are very much dependent upon men, as they are slouching or standing over the men, and one is holding her arms around the male character's neck, and the front male character is holding gun, which is again a symbolism of power, self-control, and protection. Basically, the women are excited, and they are compliant as well as, and they are depending upon men in the poster. However, you can see some dove flying in the background, some buildings in the background, sky also. So feeble, dependent, timid, reliant on men for protection. Women are signified in the poster, and men as self-dependent officers, protectors, and fighters of the feeble gender, that is women. So objects are dove birds and guns. So this again depicts part of life in nature, violence and peace, and hint of thrill and adventure also. Excitement, thrill, and
Excuse me,
adventure.
ma'am.
Yes.
Excuse me, ma'am, Noreen, I'm sorry for interrupting. Can you please kindly conclude, because we have a time limit. Thank you so much.
I'll be discussing the 2 subcategories of this genre. Then I'll quickly overview the next genre and conclude my presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am.
All right. So the other one is ritualization of subordination, and here you can see that the poster has again 4 characters, 2 females and 2 males, and again the same things are there. Men are more commanding, they are more conservative. The color schemes of the poster are again shown in more dull and retrospective way. So here you can see that there is no object, but the title is in the inverted image form, and that again depicts that something is inverted in their life, something is not correct in their life. So women are again timid, suggestive subordination under control. Men are more hegemonic and authoritative, and overall there is a conservative look. Talking about the license withdrawal, so license withdrawal is when somebody is not fully in the scene or action. So here you can see that one male character and one female character, and the female character is looking away from the camera and she is not concerned. She has focus somewhere else other than the camera, whereas the man shown in the poster is more in control, more vulnerable, more self-controlled, and more confident, and he's carrying the weapons as objects also. You can see, and these weapons depict the degree of control and armed self-control as well as independency. So the next one is body display, and the poster is of the movie Chalawa, and you can see that here the some of the body parts are shown as nude, for example the leg, the arms, and looking at the camera, stereotype revealing sexuality, product attraction, and object is formal dressing, which is again a wedding scene, but this is just a suggestive way. So these are the 1990s poster, and you can see that I won't be discussing these in detail as I've just promised with the moderator. So you can see the posters here on my right side, that is of Ghungat. There are two female characters, one male character. One male and one female character seems to be happy. Third one is probably the bride. But again, the female character is shown as the dependent one on the male character. Talking about the next one, feminine touch, you can see that the musical instrument is held by the female character in the poster. In the movie, name is Majajan. That again depicts that somebody who's in control of herself. So the woman is not looking into the camera. She is neglectful and shows that to some extent shows less confidence. Then function ranking is when one role is dominant over the other role. You can see that here there are again two major characters, but they are displayed repetitively with one younger one in the front, and you can see that the man is under control again, and the woman is timid. Child is also shown as timid one, and the overall appeal of the poster is very conservative and restrictive. Here, talking about the ritualization of subordination, the woman is leaned over the man and is lying on the chest, and you can see that man is depicted as again confident provider kind of personality, whereas the woman is shown as inattentive, suppressed, and dependent kind of personality. Talking about the next poster, second last poster, that is Tere Pyar Mein, again one female, one male character. Female maintains eye contact with the camera, whereas the male is shown as withdrawing himself away from the camera and not looking into the camera. The last poster is of Anchal, and that is here you can see that a lot of body display is there in 1990s era. There is an error on the slide. This is not from 2010s. This is 1990s, and you can see that the women characters shown in the poster are happy but in control of men, and there is much body reveal in this poster, and some sort of vulgarity or seductive appeal is also there. So this is my conclusion, and basically, as I discussed, that we'll be talking about the similarities and dissimilarities of both the eras. So basically, the 1990s movies are more provocative and more suggestive due to the direct obscene posting and wardrobe of the female actors. The males always looking angry and carrying guns. The males look as if they are embodiment of female protection and violence and male stereotyping, whereas in 2010 movies posters you can see that these are more glamorous, less provocative, and subtly suggestive. The males are not necessarily always carrying a gun, more targeted audience-based posters are there: wedding, lawyers, teenagers, families. So usually women are in 2010s are not only the symbol of objectification, but they are shown in some sort of roles also, being a journalist, being a lawyer, or being something else. Whereas this dissimilarity, whereas the color tones and overall presentation of the posters in 1990s are dull, drab, and monotonous. Black or blue kind of color themes or backgrounds were chosen. Guns or occasional musical instruments were the objects or the props. Whereas in 2010s onwards, you can see that these are bright, vibrant, and colorful hues and tones embraced with the posters and dresses of the actors: yellow, red, light blue, green, and so on. The non-human object or prop expanded to guns, stick, umbrella, glasses, plates, and uh, rose petals, and cars and sneakers, which were there in the other posters, which I did not include in the presentation. So to sum up my presentation, basically the movie poster suggests that women be powerless and dependent on male superiority and support for surviving, whereas the females, often leaning on men, are depicted in hypersexual and luscious clothes and expressions, often holding objects like glasses or plates with rose petals. This implies the women embody grace, femininity, passion, and at times suggestive of availability, reinforcing the societal concept of women to be submissive and happy under the firm control of confident men. Whereas men population is depicted in the film posters as the confident, controlling, and demanding, and standing alert, erected, and poised, and stern expressions. So the male appear to be carrying a stick, gun, or objects which are symbolism of strength or power. Thank you so much. So this is from my side.
Thank you very much, Miss Noreen. What you have presented through your research is what we have been thinking since our childhood, whenever we used to look at movie posters, and you have used very perceptive terminology to explain what have been going on within our minds. Now what we should do as a researcher is that we should now start thinking about that how can we bring change in our society, the way in which people want to look at the body of women should be changed, and how can we, what are the things which we can introduce in our society which can change the perception of male population to look at women's body. So next time, it is my proposal that next time when you do research, we can carry on with the new ideas that how can we bring on change.
Yes, thank you so much, ma'am. Surely I'll look.
Okay. Okay, now let's go to the next presenter. She's Miss Maruf Niaz from University of the Punjab. Maruf, are you ready?
Yes, ma'am. And just let me share my slides with you all. I hope you can see my screen.
Yes, we can.
Okay. My research is about constructed ideals of motherhood. This research aims to dissect the socially constructed and romanticized ideological notions about motherhood in novel Red at the Bone. It demonstrates the sexual orientation-based obligation, and the focal purpose of this research is to see that motherhood is not a
Excuse me, Miss Maruk, you're not audible.
I think there is some technical hitch.
Am I audible now?
Yes, please carry on.
To pinpoint the struggle bring mother up with the ideas of motherhood. In this novel, Woodson presents whose fantasies are bound in the wake of bringing forth a kid in the light of of society from a teenage mother. It's a conventional sentiment thought which anticipates that women should eradicate her identity as separate human beings. This research, this research is trying to investigate the idea that how patriarchy remains by ability society. Fatma, someone's mic is muted. Fatima, are you there? So this research basically for the storytelling offers in a
Excuse me, Maruk. Miss Maruk, you're not audible.
rather than
I think
evidence a
you
world.
are facing some technical issues.
Wait a minute. Am I audible now?
No, Maruk.
Am I audible now, Fatma?
Yes, you are. Yes.
Okay. Okay. Let's move on to the next slide. Jacqueline Woodson begins this novel, Relative Bond, by weaving an intergenerational tale of Black family residing in Brooklyn and shedding light on what it means to be a Black girl in America. The appearance of new, fully awakened women ready to fight against the socially constructed ideals of motherhood in order to live a meaningful life is witnessed throughout this novel. So basically, it is a character-driven story where Woodson purposely subverts the stereotypes about motherhood through her character Iris. Let me walk you through a story of novel. The novel opens with a tussle between protagonist Iris and her daughter, which evokes the memories of Iris when she was pregnant with Melody at the age of 15, unaware of the term motherhood and the responsibilities it carries with it. Her dreams are shattered the moment she gets to know about the pregnancy, and yet she decides to keep the child. Her rosy and romantic notions of life are fragmented when the Catholic school kicks her out. So the story moves like, despite having a baby, Iris embarks on an atypical path of self-discovery to pursue her ambition and flipping the gender stereotype by leaving the child to be raised by her husband, because she soon realized that she has discovered motherhood too soon. She realized she still wanted to go to college to discover the world and even rediscover her own identity. She wanted to be a part of something bigger than just being a mother to a kid. And whenever she looked into her future, she saw only not only a mother, but an empowered woman who is free from the shackles of domesticity to hold her back. So so her decision no doubt impacted her daughter, but Iris' vision of life has always been higher education and impressive career. So what do we call it, such vision? A vision of affluence maybe. So moving forward, since this research aims to dissect the gender stereotypes towards motherhood, this research will utilize the ideas of Adrienne Rich to challenge the conventional idea of motherhood. Uh, the idea of motherhood is outlined by Adrienne Rich, who famously identified two meanings of motherhood in her book Of Women Born, where she refers motherhood term as oppressive patriarchal institution, while the other word mothering refers to female experience of which is obviously female defined. So, following the groundbreaking distinction of Adrian Rich, Andrew Riley announced the theoretical understanding of resistance, which helps feminists to see how women redefine what motherhood means to them, how to legitimize the diverse ways of mothering. It enables women an opportunity to weave a more mother-centric story rather than passing on the dictated ideals of motherhood to next generation. Since red at the bone has never been analyzed, keeping in view the constructed ideals of motherhood concept. So this study aims to fill this gap. Now the research questions that are impaired in this paper are the challenges contemporary mother feels when she deliberately choose career over motherhood, and what barriers does she foresee and come across. Further, how writer employs her character Iris to subvert gender stereotype in Noel Red at the Bone, and in doing so, how unconventional motherhood pattern has influenced her own relationship with her daughter. These questions ultimately pose a further question that can fiction or the power of wild protagonists, as in this novel, can create any difference in an attempt to reconstruct the motherhood pattern. So let's move on to the next slide. Gender essentialism is a norm of patriarchal society, and this society uses motherhood as a tool to subjugate female gender. Even Martha Feynman calls motherhood a colonized concept. So, what I have argued is that how Woodson's work is illustrative work to deconstruct the cliche image of motherhood. Woodson never judged her protagonist for preferring education over motherhood because she didn't want it to be a stereotypical, stigmatized motherhood. Rather, through Iris' story, Woodson gave women at large an opportunity to talk about the experience that has never been articulated or experienced before. So Sharon highlights this binary concept in her book. She says that there is a binary in society that compels women to choose between being nurturing stay-at-home mothers or selfish career women who work for pay. So what I have argued so far is that through Iris Woodson puts out a proposition what mothers have option once they enter into the realm of motherhood. And when a mother decides to go against a normative mothering discourse and denies to sacrifice her whole life just to do one job of bringing up a kid and throwing her life's passion and ambitions into the backseat, society attach stigma and labels of bad mothers to such women. And no doubt motherhood is highly romanticized, and on top of setting unattainable standard, society society defines a woman through their relationship to children, and in doing so all other identities of women should take a backseat to mothering. This quote is from the novel. She was a child who already knew what mama meant to her and where mamas were supposed to be. I think this comment of Iris's mother summarizes the social comments about a mother who intently chose career over motherhood. Since mother blaming is so pervasive in our society that it should not be surprising when a mother replicates mother blaming in her beliefs. Even our media shows women in parks with children, making living with children 24/7. They do not show mothers who live apart from their young children, sending them parcels or calling them. So media's failure to conclude this mother is an example of society's denial, which gives an implicit message that the absent mother does not exist. So this invisibility can lead to isolation and guilt tripping into making such mothers believe that they are bad and monstrous mothers who live distant
from their children. So therefore, mothers who cannot measure up to these ideals of motherhood are often stigmatized, because mothers are considered as duty bound angels of God to serve the children with smiling face, and this very narrative was also ingrained in Melody's mind. So when Iris chooses Liz, she breaks a vicious cycle that many mothers cannot break. She shackles the societal norms, but at the expense of what, her relationship with her daughter, who now consider her as an enemy. Because how often do we hear a mother leaving a child behind, and because it's always the father, and unfortunately society has normalized it that way. On the contrary, when a mother takes a break or choose career over motherhood, it becomes a sin, a forbidden apple sin. But the fact is that Iris wasn't a monstrous mother. She chose her baby as well as herself. So when we add all this up, it becomes easier to understand why conforming to prevailing model of motherhood feels more natural than resisting it. Moving on, I would like to leave you with another quote from novel. Somewhere along the way, I became your enemy. Iris wasn't a bad mother at all, but the constructed ideals of motherhood made her Medusa in the eyes of Melody. It is evident through this discussion that Woodson, a typical mother, is daring enough to say she loves her daughter, but she hates motherhood and objects to being assigned to sole responsibility for childcare. So, Woodson narrative emphasizes that there is a need for more generous and holistic model of motherhood, which doesn't limit mothers to maternal roles only, but also to give them space. To conclude what I have discussed so far, mothering discourse is a scripted narrative of patriarchal society to subjugate female gender, and society looks at mother as a job, duty, institution rather than a relationship. Because if we start looking at motherhood as a relationship, we will have the opportunity to weave a more mother centric story to explain why becoming a mother can be a profoundly transformative experience, and why it never transforms every mother in precisely the same way. Because when we conceive of motherhood and mothering as a relationship, we are describing as individual process, not a monolithic one. So let me ask you one question. Do you think the motherhood as relationship model will ever be implemented, and we will ever be able to get us off the hook from gendered thinking that parenting is a gendered duty falling mostly on the women? Thank you. This is all from my side.
Thank you very much, Maru. Is any listener ready to answer Maru's question, which he has posed to us in the angle?
I'm sorry, ma'am, I cannot hear you. There is some disruption.
I have thrown your question to the audience. Is anyone sitting in the audience will like to reply to Maru's question? Okay, thank you very much, Maru, for your presentation. Padma, do we have that Algerian presenter present on the online?
Yes, ma'am, she was in the meeting.
But now what happened?
Let me check. No, ma'am, she is not in the meeting now. She was in the beginning.
Hmm. Okay, so let's go to the last presenter.
No, ma'am, she is in the meeting. She is in the meeting. She's joined. Can you please ask her to present?
What is her name? Miss Atoui Libedi Saud from Algeria. Can you hear us? If I am not mispronouncing your name, is it Miss Atui Liberty Saud from Algeria? Miss Saud, can you hear us?
Uh, Ma'am, her mic is on mute. Can you please unmute yourself, ma'am? We will be able to hear you in that way.
Miss Saud, will you please unmute your mic? We have a guest from Algeria, Miss Saud. We are waiting for your presentation. Fatma, shall we move on to the next presenter and then we will again give time to Miss Saud to join us?
Yes, ma'am, I think that's fine. Till then, she can figure out that
Yeah.
how can she unmute herself. We can see her video, but she's not audible
Okay.
since she's on mute right now.
Okay. So the next presenter we have is Mr. Razvan Mustafa. He is presently working in Rifa International College, Hafizabad. Razvan, please carry on with your presentation. Fatma, do we have Razvan Mustafa with us or not?
Yes, ma'am, he is here and he is going to start. Mr.
Okay.
Rizwan, please unmute yourself. We cannot hear you. Mr. Rizwan, we can see you. Your video is on, but we cannot hear you since you're on mute. You'll have to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, you are audible.
Yes, please guide me how to show my slides.
You will have an option on your screen, on your phone or on your laptop. Present now.
Yes.
At the bottom of your screen, there'll be 3 dots, and then you'll get an option of present now, and then you can share your screen from there. You are presenting, we can see your screen.
Now you can see?
Yes.
So, greetings to everybody here. So the topic of my today's presentation is the representation of the other, tracing the otherized segments of contemporary Indian society in Arundhati Roy's The Ministry of Utmost Happiness. So can you hear me now?
Yes, you are audible.
So let me start with a little bit introduction about the author and the novel. So the basic of my research is about the Arundhati Roy. Arundhati Roy is a world famous Indian-based author who has won the 1997 Booker Prize due to her maiden novel, The God of Small Things, and then he became to the international surface. Her second novel was published in 2017, After passing the 20 years, and within the gap of 20 years, he wrote many non-fiction articles. Uh, and my research paper is basically upon her 2017's novel, The Ministry of Utmost Happiness, in which I have tried to unveil the fault lines Arundhati Rai has shown in her fiction book. So let's start with the research methodology. So I have taken the methodology from Edward Said's book Orientalism, in which Edward Said unveiled the self and the other, and how what is the difference between the two. The self is at the center, and the other is on the margins of the society. The other is on the margins of the society. So the self and the other, these are the basically the binary opposition, where in a society one group, one ethnic group, one religious group leads towards in a situation where it becomes dominant and the other ones become the victims. This is the same theoretical framework that Albert Said applies when he discusses the Occidental and Orientalism, in which he shows that throughout the Europe, the literature of Europe has shown itself the superior, more intelligent, well employed, while the others, self, Asia and Africa and Latin American countries were not that much in progress. So the same is the theoretical framework I have taken for my research paper, in which throughout the total Indian country is divided on the basis of race, on the basis of color of the skin, on the basis of religion. So there are the different variations on which the world's second most populated country is divided. So there are throughout the binary oppositions, where one group is dominant, the other is subjugated. So Roy, in the start of the novel, The Ministry of Utmost Happiness, asserts that others have horrible stories to tell. So these others are the marginalized segments of the contemporary Indian society. As I have seen, this novel basically covers the past 30 years history of a democratic secular country, India, which is overpopulated with a lot of incidents, that lot of ethnic cleansing, genocide of different racial communities. This research paper towards the fault lines of contemporary Indian society. Fault lines of contemporary Indian society, basically. So contemporary Indian society society is fragmented, especially when we see the 1984 genocide against the Sikh community, in which a lot of people from the Sikh community, Sikh religions were targeted, and it became a horrible incident in the history of humanity. Especially when we see the 1992, when horrible situation happened, when the Hindutva-led group demolished the Babri Mosque in Ayodhya and built a temple there. So India, if we look at the historically, India has always been a secular country where the different religion, there's the variety that we can find in India, we can find nowhere else in the world. For example, If we look at the Europe, throughout the Europe is the Christian, other are the atheists, the small other minorities. Other when we look at the India, so India gave birth to many religions. Historically, it has been a home of different religion. It gave birth to Sikhism, Buddhism, Judaism, and Buddhism, and Hinduism, in fact. But the post-colonial India has lost its balance than it once used to be. And the Roy, in fact, Roy, why is Roy successful? Because she has given voice to the voiceless Indians. And this novel successfully portrays the panoramic view of the modern Indian society, which is divided on different bases, on the color, on skin, on ethnicity, on geographical basis. So there is a binarism even in the novel, in which the Hindus consider that they are the only nation that could be ruled the India. Even we have seen the BJP government from the last 2 or 3 decades, how the Indian politics from the secularism to the Hinduness, where they see that only Hindus are the indigenous race, indigenous have indigenous religion. Socio-political and racial and geographical, gender and religious marginalities. So modern India, as I have dissected from the novel, it is divided on the base of social, political, racial, geographical, and gender and religious marginalities. A country which was famous for its secular tradition is now becoming a failed secular state, where we see that day by day the violence is increasing against the minorities. Minorities can be transgenders, as I discussed earlier in my slides, and it could also be the Muslims who are in minority. It could also be the Sikh, it also be the Jains, and the dilapidated and sorrowful condition of the Christians. India, in fact. So Roy is attempted to give voice to the voiceless. That is the success of Roy. Roy also has written numerous non-fiction articles in which he tried to give voice to the voiceless Indian. Novel starts and ends at the graveyard, where all the marginalized segments come together. Interesting thing about this novel, that this novel starts from the graveyard. Graveyard is used as a symbol, which is often seen that in graveyard the dead people are buried, but the stereotype has changed. In 2021 India, most of the characters gather at graveyard because they are all pushed together. They have different identities. Someone is from there is transgender, someone is Muslim, someone is untouchable, so someone is Kashmiri. So they're all gathered together and gather at a cemetery, a graveyard, where they find a little bit calm and peace. And ultimately what happens, that even when all segments of the society are not given the proper rights, what happens is the resistance. And we see Roy has given a lot of examples here in her novel. The people who are not given the rights, the have-nots, are resisting and joining different liberation forces. Even we have seen that in Kashmir from the last 3 or 2 decades, the liberation movement has risen so much. And even the 5th August 2019 unilateral decisions of India to make Kashmir part of Union territory, people of Kashmir has rejected it, and it is against the wishes of the people of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. So here are the otherized segments I'm talking about. For example, let's start with otherized segments, marginalized segments of contemporary Indian society. So first otherized segments that comes in front of us is Kashmir, its land and people. Most of the narrative is written is written and based on the Kashmir's politics, in which she successfully unveiled that Kashmir was never the integral part of India. It has never been. So it is also that people, what Roy says, that it is not the Pakistan or India that will decide the future of Kashmir. It is the people of the Kashmir who will decide the future of Kashmir. And we have seen that only 700,000 troops are deployed in Valley. And we have seen perhaps Kashmir is the only example now in the world where the black skinned people of the plains are ruling the white skin. We have seen the torments of the colonialism in the 16th, 17th, 18th, 19th century when we got separated from India in 1947 and got independence from the British. And the whites were ruling the black people, the people of the brown races, the people of the color, but it has changed 1947. And Kashmir, people of Kashmir are still fighting for their right of determination. Other one are
Excuse me, Mr. Razvan, I'm sorry for interrupting, but can you please move forward to the conclusion as we have another presenter and we are short on time.
I would like to conclude in just 2 minutes, kind.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. And then the untouchables caste of India, precisely untouchables people comprises the 200 million population of India. 200 million, it is nearly more than 17% of the total population of India, and they are considered untouched. You cannot touch in the Brahmins, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra. Indian society, Indian class system is basically marginalizes the 17% of the total population of India. And then the horrible stories of transgenders. These are all the minorities. Untouchables are also the minorities, while the Brahmins, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudras forms the majority. Even the transgenders, who do not look like the normal human beings. They are not neither male nor female. And even in the 21st century, they are not deprived of the basic right. And the bad situation comes from when a country is secular, when a country is democratic, and still a section of the society is not given the proper rights. And then the women of India. We have discussed a lot, even many of the presenters before me talked about and the subjugation of women in India and Pakistan and overall in subcontinent. If we read the novels, they are the horror stories. They are untold and unheard stories about the female subjugation and the violence and torture. And there is a struggle. There is a struggle between inside them and outside them against the established stereotypical representation of India. And then the overall minorities. If we look at the minorities, Kashmiris are the minorities, Muslims are the minorities, Sikh are the minorities. Everyone is now tortured. India started its journey as a secular democratic country under the leadership of Jawaharlal Nehru. And in 50s and 60s, it made a lot of progress. It was the member of the non-alliance movement. It contributed to the world. But we have seen that past 3 decades, it has become a horrible place to live for women and for minorities. And nature and eco-criticism. What Roy interestingly tells us about is that the World Bank and IMF Bank are, debt trap. What they are doing, they are giving billions of dollars to these countries. And they are building vast water reserves, and there's a natural habitat degradation, and the whole of the ecosystem that is natural is being replaced with artificiality. In my conclusion, I would like to talk about the theme of loss. If you read this novel, you will see that the theme of loss is common to every single character in the novel. And the contemporary India is a fragmented. It is not a united India. it is a fragmented based on fragmented and divided on the basis of religion, gender, ethnicity, and the violence has become the prominent theme in 21st century India. Journey of India from a secular, democratic, multicultural, multi-faith nation to a majoritarian state. And we have seen that once there was a peace and coexistence once in the Mughal Empire, but with the passage of time, the peace was distorted. And even the sorrowful thing is that the whole of the subcontinent was divided solely based on the religion. And the problem is that after being divided, we are not in that position to provide the fundamental rights to the people of the both state. Division is still okay, but our focus should be on providing the basic necessities to the people on both sides. Otherness is a threat which must be avoided. When the society is fragmented based on different perspectives, it is a threat which must be avoided. And what are the lessons for Pakistan? So this is the horror stories from our neighbor country, comprising 1.3 billion people. These are the horror, unheard, untold stories, and they are the lessons for Pakistan. The situation is not different for Pakistan. Pakistan is also divided based on the races, based on the color skin, based on the minorities. Even there are a lot of minorities that are not being given the proper rights. Even the Christians minorities, Hindus, we see that every single day that different cases of conversion. When we look at the geographical otherness, we have seen that Balochistan is deprived of many of the fundamental rights. Interesting thing that I would like to share with you, that Sui is a area from where the gas is provided to the majority of the areas of Pakistan is in.
Thank you very much, Rizwan. Thank you very much for your presentation. When Rizwan, you are given only 10 minutes to speak, the main thing is that you have to stay focused. So you have been digressing and introducing literature, intermingling it with history and then with politics and then with Kashmir, and now you have come to Balochistan and then to Sui. Okay, it has been a very, very informative presentation, but we would have loved it if you have stayed a little bit focused. Thank you very much. Fatma, now let's go to the next presenter.
Yes, ma'am, she is with her in the meeting.
Okay. Can she unmute herself now?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Good morning.
Okay. Thank you very much.
I'm so sorry for
We welcome our international guest.
thank you. So I'm sorry.
Pakistanis are waiting for you, and on the behalf of University of the Punjab, Pakistan,
Yes.
I heartily welcome you,
Thank you very
and
much.
we wish that when this COVID situation is over, you may physically come to Pakistan.
That I will maybe. I'm not very good in English.
Miss South, we can't hear you.
I get you very well. Can I start?
Hello.
Excuse me, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you very well.
All right. The chair, Dr. SHAMAILA Dodhy. Can you hear me, please?
Yes, Dr.
Yes,
Raza, I
Dr.
can hear
Raza,
you
I
very
can hear
clearly.
you very clearly.
Um, I would,
I would, Dr.
Mr. Daljeet
Mr.
is here with
Daljeet
us,
is here with us,
and
and
we,
we,
after your next
after your next
speaker,
speaker,
please
please
request
request
Mr.
Mr.
Daljeet to give
Daljeet
his
to give his
keynote speech
keynote
because
speech
there was
because
a
there was
mix-up
a
in the
mix-up in
timing.
the timing.
So, uh, Daljeet Nagar, could you please give your keynote speech just after this speaker? Could you please accommodate him?
Of course, after the last speaker speaks up, then we will give
No,
time to
no,
the keynote speaker.
not after the last speaker. After this speaker finishes, then could you please accommodate him? He's just joined. Mr. Daljit Nagra, we are going to accommodate your keynote just after this particular presentation finishes. So kindly
Yes,
remain
this is
online.
the last presentation
Right,
of this
then after
session.
this, Ji, thank you. Thank you. So we'll be waiting for the keynote speech then after this. All right?
What time do you think that will be? Because I've got another meeting, so I can postpone. I can try and postpone that.
No, your keynote speech was at the beginning of this session, and now we're at the end of it. So after we'll just have to wait till the end of the presentation. Could you be with us till then?
Yeah. Do you know how long that will be, though? Sorry, just.
I think just another 2 or 3 minutes or 5 minutes at the most.
Okay, and then shall I spend about 20 minutes? Is that okay?
Yes, then you can spend 20 minutes.
15 minutes if need be. Okay, brilliant. Thank
Yes,
you. Perfect.
15 minutes if possible. 15 minutes. We've been looking forward to your speech, so we're not going to let you go.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you. Just bear with us. Thank you. I'm so sorry for interruptions.
Can I start now?
Okay, Miss
Okay,
Sal,
Miss Sal,
we are waiting
we are
for you.
waiting for you.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. I would like at first to thank the organizer of the conference who allowed to us to forge human and scientific links. And I would like also to say that the idea and the project of the rewriting of Sherazade is done in French, but for the requirements of this conference, I had to convert it into English, and I hope that I can get message clear. So the title of my communication is The Sherazade of Modern Time in French-speaking Algerian Literature. Je dirais le titre en français, c'est les nouvelles, les Sherazades des temps modernes dans la littérature algérienne d'expression française. Since few years, we have started to pay particular attention to rewriting and adaptation of the Oriental tales of Alf Layla wa Layla, Les Mille et Une Nuits, a subject that has certainly attracted for a long time the attention of many researchers who continue to question it until now. Our analyses are also interested for especially in the character of Sherazade, who raises a large number of reflections, both literature and critical throughout the world. Sherazade is this extraordinary woman who volunteers to save lives. Is thus presented in various critical or fictional works as the protector of the kingdom which for a long time suffered from violence but also murderous madness that went as far as beheading the majority of its women. There is problem with my micro. Tell me please if there is problem. I will maybe there is problem. You hear me? Please. This Sherazade of Alf Layla wa Layla tales come out of them to take a refuge in a new French-speaking literature. Indeed, many Algerian writers have taken it as a basis for setting up their writing projects. These communications try to see how this female character was taken over by the new Algerian fighters. By new, we mean literature writing from 90s to nowadays. It will be question of working on level that have written, reinvented, or even transformed the portrait or the character of the storytellers of the night. I will start with the first novel, La Transe des Insoumis de Malika Muqaddam, or Sherazade in the plural. I will start with talk about seductive words, la parole séductrice. So with the novel, the author speaks of seductive work. It's begin in the first chapter with the legend entitled The Standing Bed, to finish creating a new character of Sherazade, since combined with the plural. Indeed, the new Sherazade is a group of women who invent legends to save a woman from death. Those women are intelligent and cunning to enter into complicity with other women in order to protect them. The complicity is manifested in the creation of the legend of the sleeping children, seductive words that captivate and put in suspense an entire society to be able to spare some woman death or repudiation. A word that enchants the interlocutor and arouses his approval, admiration, and adherence. This word already has its effects on world society. It is that of another Sherazade, different. It is a mythical word. I refer to Malika Muqaddam. I will read in the women storytellers, the Sherazade, invented their own word to legitimize this forbidden love. They all participate in this way by this seductive words in the protection of the secret of lovers. Indeed, the myth of sleeping children invented by women is just a ruse to protect oneself. The second novel, which will be analysed in this communication, is Zabour ou les psaumes de Kamel Daoud, or Sherazade in the masculine. I will start by some questions. How to imagine a new Sherazade? How to imagine more precisely Sherazade in the masculine? In Alf Layla Layla, it was a woman who told and invented the stories, who watched every night to keep the king in suspense, who sought to save the other from the death. In his project of the metamorphosis of Sherazade, the woman, Kamel Daoud proposes to the reader, in the first place, its rewriting by putting her in a context almost similar of the Alf Layla Layla. It accentuates little by little, and second step to change the certain details, to arrive in the third time to create a male character, certainly, but which has particularly the same characteristic of the storytellers of the night. Daoud therefore played on the flexibility of the male-female character by giving him this character of the feminine for the choice of stories, while maintaining his stature as a man in the eyes of the village, the society. The character of the feminine influences Zabour and This is clearly crowded through the new stories invented by a dreamy and sweet imagination, usually attributed to a woman, on the basis of stories, source of her inspiration, and which are written by men. Reworking the text already read, giving them other tones, and adding a soft aspect, mark in more ways than one the narrator journey. Je cite. Ensuite, j'inventais des histoires en fonction d'une longue liste de livres que j'aurais voulu lire à un moment ou un autre de ma vie d'adolescent. C'était ma recette. La seule que j'ai trouvée pour à la fois surmonter la rareté des livres dans le village, l'ennui et donner du solennel à mes cahiers. The new Sherazade has thus created a field of life usurped by thinking of others, a new humanism that presents itself symbolically to rethink the relationships between individuals. Zabur rebuilt new links with others, thanks to the language and by setting up other things of the order of the symbolic. He managed the challenge, this death that comes without warning and that is not especially welcome. He managed the face this ordeal stand up to is because to understand that life can only exist by thinking of others and when find their point of crisis, distress, misfortune, we could certainly save them. The moment of overcoming death by the proper choice of words is expressed by Zabur as a singular moment of fullness. The metaphor of the boldness of death is very telling because it testifies to a shift in order of force that has the effect of destabilizing in the pole of power. Death is lost, failing, and therefore subject to the will of Zabur, the triumph. Quand ma mémoire se vide ou hésite, la mort se montre ferme, retrouve la vue. Du coup, quand je me souviens avec netteté que j'utilise les bons mots, la mort redevient aveugle et tourne en rond dans le ciel, puis s'éloigne. J'adore la décrire ainsi égarée et confirmer du même coup le monde don et son utilité. The novel ends with the narrator Zabur's dialogue with death, a dialogue that seems to give it a new statue of power, but ephemeral. This dialogue also seems to be linear, and it is since throughout the text, the narrator has always shown resistance in the face of the death. Dis alors, mon demi-frère, que votre conte est merveilleux. La suite est encore plus surprenante. Et vous ont embrouillé d'accord, si la mort voulait, me laisser encore aujourd'hui et me donner la permission de vous raconter la nuit prochaine. La mort, qui avait écouté Zabor avec plaisir, se dit en elle-même, j'attendais jusqu'à demain. Je le ferai toujours bien mourir quand j'aurai entendu la fin de son conte. This last passage in the novel plunge us back in the dazzling way into the beginning of the Alf Layla wa Layla. It reminds us exactly of Sherazad's cunning and his dialogue with the murder sultan. To conclude, we can say that a rewriting of the character of Sherazad was a fertile foundation for writers who invested.
Excuse me, ma'am. I'm very sorry. But since we are short on time, can we please move towards the conclusion? Thank you, ma'am.
We can say that the rewriting creation of the character of Sherazad was a fertile foundation for the writers who invested it to the end. Indeed, for Malika Muqaddam, there was a talk of Sherazad in the plural. It is, therefore, a rewrite, reinvention. For Kamel Dawood, there was a talk of giving birth to a new Sherazad in the masculine. It is, therefore, a metamorphosis of the storyteller of the night. Sur ce, je termine. And je vous dis thank you for your attention. I'm so sorry. I'm not very good in English. Sorry. So, c'est bon, j'ai terminé. Je vous redonne la parole.
Thank you very much, Ms.
South. De rien. You are welcome.
Mr. Daljit, can you hear us? Mr. Daljit, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Yes.
Okay, I welcome you on the behalf of the University of the Punjab.
Sorry, I couldn't hear what you said. It's echoey.
I formally welcome you on the behalf of University of the Punjab.
Thank you. So shall I speak for about 7 minutes?
Sure, why not?
Okay. I'll just talk. So I'm a professor of creative writing at Withdrawal University, London, in West London. My parents came from Punjab in the 1950s, so I was born and grew up in London. My first book, a book of poetry, I published 4 books of poetry, all with Faber and Faber. When my first book came out in 2007, it was the first book that Faber had taken by a poet of colour from a first book. They'd taken Derek Walcott after he won the Nobel Prize. And my first book was actually reviewed on television on BBC Channel, a long review of it. And I'm now the chair of Royal Society of Literature. My books won prizes, which is kind of important to say. It sounds like a boast, obviously, it's bragging, but it's that right from the first book, I've tried to use Punjabi words in my writing. And I've tried to sort of make sure that every poem has a Punjabi character in it, right from the first book. And I thought nobody would be interested in that. But thankfully, there was a big appetite for that in the British audience. And my latest book, which is called Indian, which will be published by Faber next year, one of the things I've tried to do is create a kind of Punglish in my writing, a Punjabi English, a sensibility which is Punjabi English. And I've written in standard English and in slangy English. And in this book, I want to write really in a Babu English. So some of you may be familiar with Babu English as a language, or the clerical language of 19th century Raj. And my starting point really was a poem by Nissim Ezekiel, his Goodbye Party for Miss Pushpa T.S. And some of you may be familiar with that. And that was written
included in our syllabus. And we have been teaching this poem for the last 20 years in our department.
Oh, great. Okay, perfect. So I won't talk much about that. That's good. So my starting point for my poem, it's a book-length poem, is there's a poetry group that meets once a month. And they meet in this building, which is like an MC Escher building. So very surreal, slightly odd. And they're going to talk in Babu English and try and defend Babu English, okay, as much as possible. And their starting point is that Miss Pushpa T.S. is offended because obviously the poem was controversial, and that can we defend Babu English? So in this collection, I take Babu English very seriously, and I imagine it's quite an eccentric, ornate English. And my main chair, the chair of my committee, this poetry committee, is called Mr. Vishnudas Desani. And he's very inspired by G.V. Desani, all about H. Hatter, that kind of Babu-esque collection. So I'll read a little section. So in my book poem, it's a poem that imagines it's a film and it's written as a play script. So I've kind of done a real hybrid, try and get that feeling of the Babu feeling, you know. So the director, the camera operator have as much say as the poets themselves. So I'll just read for a couple of minutes, about 3 minutes, just to give you a feel of it. So it's called Indian. So director, center stage, say to camera operator, pulley curtains apart, this talkie is operative. Poets have inhabited their bodies to the swing of the new context, being most happy seated. Camera operator replied to director, our shots are hot on dashing Mr. Vishnudas Desani. Staring out he is from this village of Jarsovi, low to his imperial moustache and worsted blazer. He's our mensch, our swami. Tasty is ghee his timber. Director make request of camera crew via operator. Focus on his teeth. They are seaside bright. Despiting air in India is interjected with grit. Mr. Vishnudas Desani is hold to face a folio with lay by Mr. Nissim Ezekiel, the papa of Indo poem, whose compositions were always in English. Mr. Desani mumble poem in accent cheekily thick. From Goodbye Party to Miss Pushpa T.S. by Nissim Ezekiel. Friends, our dear sister is departing for foreign in 2-3 days, and we are meeting today to wish her bon voyage. Whenever I asked her to do anything, she was saying, just now only I will do it. Mr. Vishnudas Desani lowers the book, checks the poetry committee. They are always in goofy mirth. Mr. Vishnudas Desani waxes, puffs to orate. Hail all committee, muses, etc. Council must pontificate on the oracle rearing a conflict. To verse in pure English, in true speech, or an idiom. No Arthurian table this month, like Nabob's instead, at this single yet myriad strange floor we are gathered. Our multitude seating feels theatre-like. I feel dunked in a pit while you all seem balconied or boxed. I say, we are helicopterized as though swayed in a sketch by MC Escher. These 5 wooded dimensions, whose view is Everest to Ant perspective in the same gamut of a look around. I say, O peak of Ind, winking nether at the docked Chandrayaan, our rocket that slaked the lunar waters while NASA looked on wilted. O Ind, from this hill, those cottages weep panegyrics to their siblings in Wessex plus Walden. Yonder, what pokes from those groves? A Victorian bookstore with folios hot off press by Armitage to Zephaniah, heaped fresh, fresher than the shelves at Hay. Hail, our destinies are fissured. Mine soul follows Duffy, my nut flows after Percy Bysshe. Dear audience, camera crew are their own cheeky law. They again temporarily slip by Mr. Desani to record whomsoever has thrown a bone of interest, his utmost Babu style. Thus director whispering to camera operator, does Mr. Desani parley in fixed syllables and interlocking rhyming trebles? Camera operator, fine triple rhymes only I hear. He is famed, our great vowel shifter, our vowel bybender. Director assert his higher caste status. Mr. Vishnudas, be jolly back to him. He is vaping up a brain of steam. So this is Mr. Vishnudas. I'll just read for another minute. Well, Zoom for voluntary displacement parishioners. Some from yonder vale, some from motherland. Shrunken mother, EU widow. Oh, blighty. But let me unveil this month's blight for our prognostication. It drives like a parping tuk-tuk that reared its horn when Nissim wrote for Miss Pushpa in the 1970s an au revoir in Babu, a lay in Babu, in the lingua franca of the Raj. Oh, Babu, our conjugal cave of Englishes, our marzipan juggernaut with which we mellow our poetic muse. We have been ancestrally reared by the royal garland of the Raj for our oversight. I mean, insight in admin, in a language for writing, but not conjecturing in. Happy keeping Sahib's books, hoc est corpus meum. Happy with hand by heart quoting Plato's Symposium, in a phonetics that smashed the ears of Dr. Johnson. Our reward? We became buds from Kipling to Orwell to Rushdie. But now our conduct must be to repel the onslaught on bubble, to sow where scorn cannot reap. Are we bubbles left queer as a clockwork orange, sloughed off colonial lineage, a stitch in time holding on with empire wounds? Are we the musical of Frankenstein? All I can say, our national tree have limbs bountiful, willy-nilly brewing fetus who are wide-moored, reared tall in coolie or bubble. Does English breed? By our windfall. Okay, I'm going to stop there. And that poem, loads of people speak in different kind of metrical forms, and it goes on for about 60 pages in that kind of slightly crazy style. So any comments or questions, welcome, or I'll stop there anyway. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Daljit. We have really enjoyed your poem. Why? Because probably because of the same ancestor which we share.
Yeah. So, yeah. Sorry, I've got a hay fever at the moment, so I've been slightly sniffy. Yeah, I think.
No, you were perfectly audible. I'm talking about the theme of your poem that probably we can relate with bubble English, with which you are referring to, very easily and comfortably because we share the same ancestral background.
Yeah. Absolutely, this is kind of the old India, as it were, and I'm trying to write this poem really uncompromisingly for a second or third generation British Asian, for them to understand their own kind of lineage to some degree, but be uncompromising. So in a way, I think the poem's sort of facing the Western audience, but the director and camera operator constantly question the Western listener. What will the Western listener understand, and how the poem is compromised directly for the Westerner, and why it's not really an authentic poem written for an Asian person. So I wanted to play with that set of ideas. So the Western reader, my reader will essentially be a white middle-class person who's highly educated, who lives in Britain, who goes holidays abroad, that's it. And I want to question their comfortable reading. So it appears to be oriental or exotic at times, then something happens to challenge that voice and say, well, that's a terrible thing that person said. So the Western reader is sort of challenged all the time.
Thank you very much, Daljit, for your thought-provoking ideas. And we can do that next time.
Dr. Shamaila, could I please say something? Daljit, this is Dr. Amna Raza, and you might not be seeing my name there because I'm speaking from the main video conferencing room under the name of Amna Umar. This is Dr. Amna Raza. I just wanted to say that I'm delighted that you were able to make it.
Thank you very much.
And I also wanted to tell you that Goodbye, Miss Pushpa was a poem which is also included in our MA Literature syllabus. And I used to teach it. And, the students did not find it funny at all. And I found it so difficult teaching it because they couldn't understand that there was something wrong with the dialect, with the grammar, and that it was a dialect. They didn't understand what I was trying to do and how humorous it actually was. So it actually fell flat on its face whenever I taught it. You can't teach somebody to laugh unless they understand the dynamics of language. So thank you. I think it was a very, very creative session that we had with you. Dr. Shamaila.
All the best. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dr. Shamaila, would you like to conclude?
Thank you very much to all of my presenters and to all the listeners. There were certain suggestions which I brought forward to some of the presenters. It's just for their future research, which they might think on, and it might help them to think from a different angle. Thank you very much, Dr. Raza. Thank you, Mr. Daljit, and all the people. I conclude and give my mic to Ms. Fatma, who is the coordinator of the session.
Thank you, ma'am. We will conclude our panel here. I would like to thank our worthy chair, Dr. SHAMAILA DODHY, for her worthy presence, our keynote speaker and all the presenters and their attendees for their presence and interest, and Dr. Raza as well. Recording of the session will be shared to the presenters and the chair. However, if any attendee wants to have the recording, they may send an email to the coordinator. Have a nice day, everyone. Allah Hafiz.